The BAME Vision logo, 4 solid circles from left to right in colours of brown, tan, coffee and beige, with the words BAME written in white within them, with the word Vision written in tan underneath, and below the words supporting ethnically diverse communities with their eye health and sight loss.
Welcome to the 4th BAME Vision National Eye Health Week webinar, and today's theme is Live Well, See Well. My name is Bhavini, I'm the chair of BAME Vision. And I'd like to now introduce our first speaker today, Sonal Rughani, who's an optometrist.
Hello, good evening, everybody, and delighted to be invited to speak today. So thank you, Bhavini. So I am an optometrist, and I've worked in a sort of variety of settings, from community optometry, hospital eye care, through to working for 2 of the voluntary sector organisations. So I do some low vision work with RNIB, and I look after children who have got special educational needs in special schools, with a charity called Seeability. And I am really passionate about looking after our eyes and maximising our vision, and preventing what is avoidable sight loss. So it's actually really, it's a great honour to speak today on behalf of this group. And I am just going to share my screen if I may. So there we are. And I hope that everybody can see this well. So live well, see well. And I hope, Bhavini, please do interject if there are any additional links with any of the other webinars, because what works really well during National Eye Health Week is that we join up so much of our kind of considerations and thoughts about eye care. So I hope that this links to some of the webinars we've had earlier in the week, last week, and of course next week. So what does it mean to live well and see well? So let me just make sure this is working properly. So what does it mean to live well and see well? So there are modifiable risk factors. And by that, I mean that our lifestyle and our choices will make a difference on how well we see. And our lifestyle is dependent on our vision. And when our vision goes, and you know, I work with a lot of people with reduced vision, how you can continue to have a very independent full life with the vision that you've got, what we call residual vision. And that's what I feel really passionate about. And I'd like to talk a little, if I may, on how it works both ways. So we have, you know, our health, and maybe another set of health conditions might impact on our vision. Perhaps something like diabetes or blood pressure, and we'll talk about those a little bit more. And conversely, so our health will impact on our vision, and our vision will impact on our ability to look after our health conditions. So somebody with diabetes who's beginning to lose their vision might find it difficult, for example, to see the packaging on their food labels, just as an example. So I hope that when we talk about living well and seeing well, we can talk about both of those groups and how they interact with each other. And it's really important that, you know, certainly as health professionals, we can support, you know, in both directions. So the eye is very susceptible to what we call oxidative stress. And we will have heard a lot about that when it comes to inflammatory markers around our general health. And the reason why the eye is very vulnerable to this is because the eye needs a lot of oxygen. And by virtue of it needing a lot of oxygen, it's subject to oxidative stress. There's also a high concentration of polyunsaturated fats, fatty acids that are part of the structure of the eye. And of course, the eye, you know, is exposed to lots of high energy light. Okay? And this combination leads to this generation of these oxidative free radicals. And that can cause a lot of damage to the various layers and tissues inside the eye. So what can we do And you know, a lot of the title and the subject of this talk this evening is around living well, and a lot of that will come with nutrition. So I just thought we'll start with nutrition, and vitamins, minerals, carotenoids, which is going to be part of the give the pigment in the eye, are found in many fruits and vegetables, and they protect your sight. So our diet is so important. Similarly, cold water fish like cod, sardines, and tuna are really important sources of those omega fatty acids, those long chain fatty acids. They provide the structural support to the membranes inside the cells of our eyes, and actually they can help with dry eye. And you know, in our practice, what we find is that many times the dry eye is one of the most prevalent issues which people present with, that their eyes can feel gritty and dry. Conversely, their eyes might be watering, but the eye feels like it's burning, or it feels like it's itchy or scratchy, and that's dry eye. And this is where your diet can really help. Age-related macular degeneration, which we may have heard of, is a sort of a degenerative age-related change with which we can lose our central vision, and we'll look at that in a moment. But fish can really help. One portion of fish a week can reduce that risk by up to 40%. So these are all preventative measures that should be part of our diet from our infancy. Okay, this is why we talk about the importance of children having a really important diet. You know, as part of that, it will be fruit, vegetables. So if we go on to talk about blueberries and grapes, they can really help improve night vision. And we'll talk about an eye condition, retinitis pigmentosa, which can really impact on our night vision. And Anjani, who's going to be speaking this evening, will really shed a lot of light and insight into what it's like to live with difficult night vision. Green leafy vegetables, I'm sure we've heard about the importance of green leafy vegetables for our eyes. Spinach or kale, for example, they're rich in these carotenoids, which give the eye the important pigment which helps with macular degeneration again. So this rainbow of fruit and vegetables are really important for so many different structures and layers within our eyes. And carrying on with nutrition. So these carotenoids that will come from our diet will also help with things like glare. And I'm sure if I was to ask for a quick, you know, hands up, I think at some point, many of us will have experienced problems where lights feel very bright, or it's our vision feels where we're struggling to, it's like looking through a dirty curtain, which is often what we see when people experience a cataract. Avocados, whole grains, again, they're rich in zinc and vitamin B. And deficiency in these vitamin B complexes can increase the risk of cataract, and also changes to the back of our eyes due to diabetes, diabetic retinopathy. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that. Papaya is again a very good source of beta carotene to help with these free radicals and this oxidative stress. Eggs are very rich in various products, various different types of proteins, cysteine, sulfur, amino acids, lutein, lecithin, to again help with this pigment that we want to keep. Garlic, onions, shallots, capers, all rich in sulfur, which protect the lens from cataract. And I, you know, in our conversations, we will have come across some people who are in their 90s who've never had a cataract, or, you know, have not developed a cataract as yet. And yet there'll be some people in their 50s or even 40s who are developing a cataract. You know, so there's lots of genetic factors. It's multi-factorial, but our diet is very, very important. And this is from childhood. This is from, you know, in our development, that the value of a balanced diet is really important. And you know, there we are with a little image there that I'll just describe, that's got lots of different types of fruit and vegetables that will protect our eyes. And you know, I think I'm probably right, Bhavini, in saying that I don't think there's any vegetable that's not good for your eyes in one respect or another, one layer or another. So fresh, the fruit and vegetables are vital.
You're doing.
So I'll go on to talk a little bit about common eye conditions. Okay, so and the reason why I'm just mentioning these just here is to just give the background of why when we live well, we can continue to see well. Okay, so I mentioned cataract already, and one of the most important sort of predisposing factors that will determine whether we get a cataract, and I'll often say to my patients, everybody gets cataracts eventually because they are related to age. Just like we become a little bit long-sighted, where we need reading glasses, the next natural progression is cataract. So this is kind of our predisposition with age to develop cataract. Age-related macular degeneration, again, it's age-related. There are factors where that risk will increase, and we'll talk about smoking. But age is a key factor, which we can't do anything about. We'll highlight these, and then we'll talk about what we can do, because the most important factor is what we can do to look after our eyes. Retinal diseases, including retinitis pigmentosa, is really linked to our genetics. Okay, although we'll hear about how it can have, a mutation where it can miss generations, and but that's the predisposing factor before we start improving our lifestyle. And diabetic retinopathy is really important because just by virtue of being diabetic, the longer you're diabetic, the more likely you are to develop diabetic retinopathy, and the little small vessels in the blood at the back of the eyes are very vulnerable. And it's really important that we look after our health, because the longer we're diabetic, the more likely we are to develop diabetic retinopathy. So we'll just spend a minute here looking at the different types of functional vision loss. Okay, so we've got some images on the screen here. The first image is split in half, where we can see somebody holding a picture frame, where you can see two characters, which looks like a father and a son. And then the second part of the image is where you can see the person's hands, but you can't see the images at all. So being able to see the faces in that photograph becomes so difficult. And that is related to the loss of our central vision, which is age-related macular degeneration. So a key example of central vision loss, which makes it really difficult to recognize faces, makes it really difficult to read as well. There's a second image on the page, which is of a park with like a central sort of shelter, where you can see the central shelter, but you can't, the outskirts of it are all glazed over, are all darkened. And that's what happens when you develop like a type of tunnel vision. And that can happen, that's loss of peripheral vision there. And that can happen with glaucoma, and that can happen with retinitis pigmentosa as well. Okay. Different types of vision loss continued. So we have an image here of a little girl whose face is very blurry. It's not very clear. It's not very crisp. And that's a loss of contrast sensitivity. And that can happen with cataract. It can also happen with laser treatment with diabetes. It makes it really difficult to go down steps. I always worry about individuals who've got loss of contrast, because the curb or a step going down can be quite difficult, and you can stumble or fall. And then the final image on this page is of a family where you've got various parts of it sort of blackened out, and that vision becomes really patchy. So when we ask these patients to read on a letter chart, they can sort of dodge the black spots and they can make out, a few letters, but it's very, very patchy vision. And navigating with that patchy vision is really very difficult. And that's patchy vision there. So I think that will just contextualize the different ways that our sight can be affected with a number of different conditions. So we've talked about what the factors are that will determine whether you get these. So age, genetics, but what can we do? What are these modifiable risk factors? And that's the key part of this talk. So obesity, and there's been a lot of new research talking about the impact of obesity. And in researching for this talk, I was staggered by some of the findings. So really interesting new area of research ongoing currently. Diet, we've talked a little bit about diet already, but really important for that rainbow of vegetables. So our nutrition, which is, going to be linked to our vitamins, our time of our food, our, so not just our diet, but how we eat our food, combined with our hydration levels. Smoking. Now, smoking is another big one, and we'll spend some time talking about smoking, and alcohol. Okay? And there's some research emerging about alcohol as well. And finally, exercise, because it's really important that our movement will support the rest of our healthy profile when we talk about our vision. Okay? It's combined with, it impacts on our obesity levels, it impacts on our diet. So exercise is a key one as well. So I'll spend a few minutes talking about diabetic retinopathy, because as far as these modifiable risk factors, as far as sort of living well, seeing well goes, people that live with diabetes are faced with some of the most difficult challenges of living with a long-term condition. Okay? Managing those sugar levels on an everyday basis is no easy task. It's okay to do it for a week, it's okay to do it for a month, maybe a year, but every day it is difficult. Okay? However, diabetic retinopathy is a progressive eye condition. And at the beginning, you wouldn't even notice. But progressively, as the vision goes, it can be treated. But once you start to lose vision due to diabetic retinopathy, you can't recover that vision. Now, it's subject to a whole host of inequalities with an increased risk of progressive visual loss. So we talk about socioeconomic deprivation, accessing appointments, understanding our appointment letters, understanding these health messages. Amongst these high-risk groups, they're not attending these diabetic retinopathy screening appointments where, photographs are taken every year with some eye drops. So the early stages of disease are then not picked up, which then progress further. Within the Black, Asian and ethnic minority groups, there's actually a 3 times greater risk compared to people from the Caucasian communities. So it's really important that this is picked up early, and these messages are conveyed and communicated so that people can make informed choices. And that's really important. So controlling our sugar levels is probably the most important, alterable, modifiable risk factor. And of course, many of us will know that there are 2 types of diabetes. You've got the type 1, where people have got diabetes from a young age, where their bodies are just not producing the insulin required to control their blood sugar levels. And there was a really important trial, the Diabetes Control and Complications Trial, which found that if you actually keep your sugar levels controlled really well, you can reduce the risk of developing sight-threatening retinopathy by 76%. And it can slow down this progression by 54%. So in type 1 diabetes, it's really important to keep those sugar levels controlled. Similarly, there was another big study, the UK prospective diabetes study, which found that in people with type 2 diabetes, so for those that are diet controlled perhaps, or develop diabetes later in life, still reduced that by 25% with controlling those blood sugar levels. It's really important to control those blood sugar levels. However, it's really important to do it gradually, to do it slowly with support, because if you do it suddenly, it can actually speed things up, because those blood vessels at the back of the eye become weaker with the blood sugar levels becoming going higher. So if you imagine a little hose pipe that's getting little holes in it, if you suddenly change that, then those blood vessels are so vulnerable, they sort of almost spasm, and then actually you can get more retinopathy. So it's really important to do it gradually. So we've got to be careful with this long-term sugar level, what we call the HbA1c, and keeping our sugars. And this is the old money, so to speak. 6.5 to 7% is a really important target level to control our blood sugar levels. And we also have blood pressure, again, really important. So going back to talking about that hose pipe, so if you imagine you've got a hose pipe, which like a little blood vessel at the back of the eyes, they're tiny, they're very weak. And then if they start to develop these little holes because the sugar levels are not good, if you then imagine that you step on or press part of that blood vessel, then of course everything's going to be squeezed out because of the blood pressure. So controlling our blood pressure is really important, and keeping that target, according to another study, between under 140/80 is really important to control this diabetic retinopathy. And again, for people that have got some changes in the central part of their vision due to diabetes, what we call maculopathy, that's even more important in type 2 diabetes. Okay, so really important. Smoking is another factor which will make diabetic retinopathy get worse, as is like high cholesterol levels, as in fact indeed is obesity. It's an independent risk factor for progression of diabetic retinopathy. Anemia, so it's really important to keeping those iron levels good, because a hypoxia is when there's low levels of oxygen. So, you know, if we don't keep our iron levels well, and as a diabetic person, then it can lead to this lack of oxygen, which can make diabetic retinopathy worse. And carotid artery occlusive diseases. Okay, so just our broader health. I mean, you know, diabetes is a lifelong condition which we have to look after in so many important ways. We talk about macrovascular disease, where it's the big vessels, but the small vessels, the microvascular complications like diabetic retinopathy, can give us clues. And the eyes are, I mean, I'm biased, of course I love the eyes, but the eyes are the only place where we can visually see what's happening to the blood vessels. So I can look to the back of your eyes and see the tiny little blood vessels and see what's happening to them with blood pressure or with diabetes. And it's really important that we pick up on these small vessel disease, because we can then help to support the big vessel disease. So if we're looking after the small blood vessels, then we're not going to start worrying about the carotid artery and the big vessels. So that's a little focus on diabetic retinopathy there, just because there's so much we can do to live well and see well whilst we live with diabetes. If we then move on to age-related macular degeneration, you know, it's one of the leading causes of blindness in our Western world, and nutrition is a key factor that's part of that. And we might well have come across lots of different types of supplements that we can take to sort of control the progression of macular degeneration. But I hope in this talk, what we can do is really highlight how important a diet is to prevent that onset of macular degeneration in our early years. Lutein and zeaxanthin are what we call carotenoids that make up the macular pigment that protects against developing this degeneration in the macula. And they protect the retina because of this antioxidant property. And they also help with cataracts. Now, there were two big studies which looked at the sort of daily supplementation with vitamin C, copper, zinc, beta carotene. And what they found is that if you've got macular degeneration already, then these supplements can support people, can protect from it progressing to what we call, you know, advanced macular degeneration. However, in the second part of that study, ARIDS 2, they did find that for smokers, they had to be very careful with this beta carotene part of the supplement. So there was an amended formula for people who are smokers who are living with macular degeneration. So, we have age as a factor which we can't change. But in our early years, if we have a diet that's very balanced in these green leafy vegetables, then we're not having to rely on these multivitamin supplements in our later years. Cataract is similar. So again, the use of these, this diet and these multivitamins, they can reduce the risk of developing what we call central cataract in the middle of the lens of the eye over an approximate 10-year follow-up period. But that's a long time. 10 years is a long time to be using these supplements, using these multivitamins. And that's where my plea is this long-term call for good nutrition and a good diet from our early years. So there we are. That's the importance of, good eye health. There's an image there that's just come up, which is in the shape of an eye with lots of different types of plant-based foods that will protect the eye. Lots of different images of nuts and fruit and vegetables. So we'll talk a little bit about obesity. Okay, so obesity it works both ways. Okay, so with obesity, it's more difficult to manage your obesity with a visual impairment, because especially at the beginning, when you have this early onset of visual loss, how do we have, there's a whole new way of learning to live and regain and maintain our independence, going out, being active, finding new ways of being active. But also, that's fine once you've got visual impairment, but actually obesity can be preventative in developing that visual impairment in the first place. Okay, so obesity is linked with this increased risk of developing diabetic retinopathy, the increased risk of, so these are separate risk factors. Okay, increased risk of macular degeneration, cataract, glaucoma, and ocular surface disease. Now that means that with obesity, you're at an increased risk of even developing a dry eye. Now, dry eye is very uncomfortable, and it requires ongoing management with drops or lid hygiene. There are metabolic changes happening all around our body because of obesity. And that in turn can influence our ocular health. So it's kind of linked to just how our body functions with obesity. And staggeringly, this is what I learned, is that people that have bariatric surgery, and I'm certainly not advocating for surgery, but it's been shown to be protective against the development of eye disease. And that's quite a staggering finding of just how much of an impact obesity has on the eye. So I found that really interesting. So again, some of the studies have found that visually impaired people have actually a higher prevalence of obesity and malnutrition. And that's, due to difficulty managing their activity levels, their independence, their diet. It's really difficult to shop, eat and prepare meals. Now, there's a lot more work, there's a lot more research that needs to be done to support that. But certainly in my practice, I talk to people where that, especially as they're getting older and perhaps more infirm, they're no longer able to go out and do their shopping for themselves. Or often people are really trying to help them and shop for them, prepare their meals. But, it's really important to sort of also think about the impact on their broader health. So we'll just focus now on smoking. Okay, so if in terms of eye conditions, if we say that diabetic retinopathy, I think, is the one that we can probably do the most to control, to look after our eyes with, in terms of the number of factors we can improve and control. Smoking is probably the one modifiable factor that's got the biggest impact. As much as diet does, as much as obesity does, we'll talk about alcohol in a moment, but smoking is quite staggering, and you'll see in a moment why it's so important that we as health professionals, but also with our patients, with our communities, really highlight the impact that smoking has, not just on our health, but on our eye health. Okay, so smoking can be can have got a causative associative link with cataracts, with age-related macular degeneration, with dry eye, with central and branch retinal artery occlusion. And interestingly, they can also affect, smoking also affects the way the center of our vision, our macular function, and the way that the retina, the film at the back of the eyes, if we imagine our eyes are a camera, actually function. It can also result in a raised intraocular pressure, which is a big consideration with regard to glaucoma. It can have an impact on thyroid eye disease, and it can, in fact, also have an effect on our color vision. Okay, and there's an image that comes up there that's quite a powerful image of a bearded man whose eyes are just covered with smoke there. It's just quite a powerful image that I found. So the way smoking works is that it increases those free radicals. It increases that oxidative stress, and that accelerates our aging. And it alters the way that our body is able to absorb these vitamins and minerals from our diet. So we might be doing so much to control our diet. We might be doing so much to maintain our nutrition, but smoking can take away that effect, because it will damage the way the body's able to get the benefit of those vitamins and their minerals. So passive smoking is also significantly harmful, and that's really important for families of smokers. And it basically, the way that smoking affects the eye is basically because of these free radicals, and the way it reduces the amount of oxygen that gets to the eye, because it's causing more oxidative stress. So there's less oxygen getting to the tissues of the eye. And it's highly linked with age-related macular degeneration and cataracts. Now, here are some really interesting stats. The link between smoking and age-related macular degeneration is as strong as the link between smoking and lung cancer. Now, that's quite staggering. And I wonder on this group, how many people are aware of that? And, broadly, what the research highlights is that people are not aware of the impact, or the scale of the impact of smoking on our eyes. Okay, so smokers double their risk of developing age-related macular degeneration. Now, there are two types of macular degeneration. One that's dry, progressive, we can't do much for, but there's a lot of ongoing research to see if we can change that. The other is the wet type. Now, the wet type comes on very quickly. There's a very small window to treat it, and it's much more visually debilitating, very, very quick, sudden change in our vision. And it can happen earlier as well, okay? And it's got a big impact on the central cataract, which can obscure our vision centrally, and with thyroid eye disease as well. So smoking is a really important factor for our eyes, probably one of the most important modifiable risk factors, in our later years. So there's an image that's just come up there, which again, another powerful image of an eye where they've got some cigarettes forming the central part of the eye, and it says stub out your vision, not stub out your cigarette, not your vision. So we have an opportunity here to really highlight how powerful stopping smoking is. And this is our challenge, okay? We've got an image here of the light coming through the clouds, okay? Because smoking cessation can be really, really powerful to reverse this risk of developing visual loss, okay? So people who stopped smoking 20 years ago so 20 years of smoking cessation takes down the risk of developing macular degeneration, similar to that of non-smokers, okay? So the risk starts to decrease after 10 years of not smoking. So these are really important public health messages. If people have smoked, there is a real value in stopping smoking to prevent that vision loss. And we say that losing our sight is the sense that people fear the most, then actually the stopping smoking cessation message is really important to this prevention, so that we can really value and appreciate our sight in our later years as well. So we'll move to talking a little bit about alcohol. And the links between alcohol and eye health are certainly not as strong as smoking. And, you know, what the literature will tell us, that in moderate amounts, alcohol is actually thought to be beneficial for us. And it's an ongoing debate, I know. But heavy or excessive increases the risk of high pressure, stroke, coronary heart disease, and heartbeat irregularities. And we've talked about how all of these factors can actually impact on our eyes as well. But alcohol abuse, particularly in those who are also heavy smokers, can cause a toxic progressive, what we call optic neuropathy, and that's which affects the nerve at the back of our eyes. And this can cause, you know, painless visual impairment, which affects our color vision and can affect our central vision, and it happens in both eyes at the same time. So it, you know, it can be very debilitating. But you know, that will be in those very heavy drinkers who are also smokers. But you know, it's important to highlight that, you know, that there is a factor that alcohol plays on how we live well and how we see well. Now we'll talk a little bit about exercise, and you know, and the benefits of exercise are just so multifactorial on our mood, on our health. But regular exercise, diet, and the avoidance of smoking can help preserve our vision. Exercise, in turn, reduces the sight loss from that narrowing or hardening of the arteries. It will make sure that our blood pressure is well controlled. It will be preventative for diabetes. So in turn, the exercise can reduce that risk of that sight loss and other complications from all of these different conditions. And I think that is me. And we have a final slide here, which has got an image saying take control, which is that we have an opportunity to really take control of our health, which in turn will take control of our eyes. And there's a final image there of an eye that's made up in the shape of an eye with lots of different fruits and vegetables. But I hope that's been helpful. My email address is there for anybody that's got any questions, and I'll come back to you, Bhavini.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonal, and apologies to everyone before. I was trying to get Sonal to start presenting before my coughing attack started. So no, thank you. You started that brilliantly, and I think that was so informative, so useful, and just a great reminder to us all. Before we bring on our next speaker, Anjani, I just want to remind everyone that there is time. We will be doing questions and answers. So if there is any questions for Sonal, and once you've heard from Anjani, you know, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll monitor that, or you can put your hand up, or if it's easier, just to unmute, and we can take your questions or comments in that way. But before that, I would like to invite Anjani, who's our lived experience speaker today, very inspirational, who takes good care, and it's a good link into Sonal's talk, you know, how she uses diet, nutrition to help her preserve her sight that she has got remaining, a kinesiology practitioner, from a graphic designer, and it's just a wonderful story Anjani has. So Anjani, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Absolutely, yeah, lovely.
Hi, thank you for that lovely introduction. And I have to say, Sonal's presentation has really scared the life out of me. And I'm so glad to think that I don't do any of those negative things, because sight is so precious. And I can't imagine why anybody would do anything to harm that. I have retinitis pigmentosa. Mine has been a much longer progressive degenerative condition where I think the first 2/3 of my life I've had sight. it's only been the last third of my life that I have been experiencing more severe sight loss. It started with night blindness as a child, and I had myopia. Then it was only when I was about 18 that I went to get my contact lenses, because I was wearing very thick glasses. So at 18, I went to an ophthalmologist who then looked at me, looked at my history, checked my eyes and said, I have a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which meant nothing to me at the time. But because I had such weak eyes, as my family thought, my father was concerned that I should not go into academia. So I said, how about if I go for art? So I went to do graphic design, which I think my father probably thought, she's going to paint colors. It's very soothing for the eyes. It's going to be, okay. But I did something called arts, advertising in applied arts, which was a 5-year program. I was born in Tanzania, went to live in India. I went to a boarding school in secondary school, and then I went to art college in Mumbai. And there I did 5 years of advertising in applied arts. And there were no issues as far as my sight was concerned, except night vision. And it never concerned me much. Then I moved to the States, was there for another 4 years, where I went on to did again computer graphics and graphic design, as they called it there. I got into animation and television graphics. I came to the UK when I got married. Again, I was driving in the US. I didn't have issues. Life was pretty normal. But by this point, slowly, my peripheral vision had started to deteriorate, but not to any level that it was disturbing. I was still driving. I worked in London for a couple of years. Then I moved to Leicester, where I joined a conference organizing company. And then at about another 6 years later, at this point, I was thinking, okay, we start a family, but I wasn't sure, how would my sight affect my child? So I had written to Professor Bird, who was at Moorfields Eye Hospital at that time. And there was not much knowledge about genetics. So there wasn't anything conclusive he could say to me. And he said, there isn't any evidence, you can go ahead. So I did. And I have a beautiful son as a result of it. But gradually, I started to lose my sight. By this point, I was working in a museum, a local museum. I was the exhibition design manager there. Again, not realizing that I may not be able to do what I was doing in the art field. And I loved what I did. Again, I was very fortunate that I went to see another ophthalmologist who advised me that if I wanted to have a career, I better think about retraining. And I thought at that time, what's he talking about? I'm driving, I can see. But I started looking around thinking, how it is when you get older and you want to future-proof and you think about moving to a bungalow or something, you don't know how long, your limbs are going to last out. So I thought I better look at what other thing I could do while I can still see. And I came across this course called Kinesiology, which is a complementary health therapy. So it was a complete switch from art to more of the sciences. And I did a 3-year program here in Leicester while I was still working in the museum. The kinesiology taught me a lot of different things, all about, just as Sonal has mentioned, all about health, nutrition, diet, lifestyle, anatomy, physiology, clinical medicine, nutrition, counseling. So I learned all that other aspects, and it was very, very interesting. And I've been practicing this since, 2000. And by this point, my sight was slowly deteriorating. I wasn't driving at this point. I was using public transport. So I was able to read, I studied, I could do all of that. So I was very fortunate in thinking ahead. And then in 2006, by this point, I was getting quite tired of struggling and being in denial, avoiding facing the fact that I was, it was becoming trickier and more difficult. So at a particular appointment for my annual eye appointment at our local hospital, I thought, right, I'm going to be just going to give up and only press the button in the visual field test when I can actually see the light. Because at this point I was cheating before that, not wanting to admit to the fact that my peripheral vision was really going down. So my tunnel vision was still clear. And it was so interesting that when I was ready to surrender and face the fact that I was struggling, straight away after that test, I was taken aside and taken to another room, explained that I had pretty severe sight loss and that I was eligible for either partially sighted or registered blind. And I was in shock. I sat there crying, thinking, what am I doing here? And the lady was so good and she was so concerned. And she said, are you okay? Can I call anybody? I mean, I've always been pretty independent all my life. So I've tried to face things by myself. So I said, no, I'm a therapist. I can cope with this. I know I'm going through grief. Let me just sit here and cry. And she was very good. Anyway, so I thought, I don't want to go through this again. So I asked her, what's the difference between the two registrations? And when I heard it's, in a short while, I'm going to come again, I said, no, I'm just going to go with it, bite the bullet, get registered blind. And that's what I did. And I was very fortunate. I had an ECLO, the eye clinic liaison officer at the hospital, who was a member of Vista Blind, which is a society for the blind here in Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. It's an excellent society. It's, I think, one of the oldest ones, over 150 years old. At that time, they were well funded, so I got a lot of support with rehabilitation, navigation, learned to use a white cane. Again, with anything like this, dragging my feet, didn't want to let anybody know that I couldn't see. Because I thought, how can an exhibition design manager be blind? It's all my own hang-ups. This is what I've discovered along the way, that when we allow and approach the possibility that, okay, this is happening, what can I do now? Adapt and accept, it becomes easier. Now, I've also been very fortunate. I've attended quite a few different workshops, and in one of them, it was by Dr. John F. DeMartini, who it was a 7-day course, and we were, he was talking about all sorts of aspects of life. And one of the courses he also did was something called, I forget now the title of it, but it was essentially talking about we live in a world of polarity. So there is positive and negative occurring at the same time. So in every trauma, there is a blessing. And at every blessing, there will be some trauma. So in essence, at the end of the course, I asked him, I said, what do I do about my sight? And I explained to him what sight I had left. And he said, why don't you do this? It was called breakthrough experience. That's it. So he said, why don't you do the breakthrough? And instead of putting a person in there, think of your eyes as a personality and make a list of what's good about it, 10, 20, things that are good about sight loss and what's bad about it. So I thought, okay, 100 things that are bad about it. So I'm not going to bother with that list. So how is this helping me? And it took me a long time to come up with even 5. But the fact that I did that there is some blessing in my situation, made me overcome and stop dragging my feet. And then I started looking, because I didn't know much about retinitis pigmentosa. I didn't know what else was available in the country. So I went online and found a charity called British Retinitis Pigmentosa Society, BRPS, which then changed its name to Fighting Blindness. And then the last name now, it's called Retina UK. So it's, I've heard about this and been part of the Retina UK as it is today since about 2008. And then in 2011, I attended one of their open day patient information days at Oxford Eye Hospital, and I heard about genetics. That's when I went and got my genetic testing done, because this is an inherited genetic condition, but nobody in my family has it. None of my uncles or cousins or aunts that I know of have it. So I did not have any kind of guidance to know where it was going to go, how much I was going to lose, no clue. But in a way, that might have been a blessing, because it never stopped me. I never allowed anything to stop me to get on with whatever I wanted to do. And in around 2011, I finally took my retirement, early retirement due to ill health. And that's when I thought, and that's the year that my son went to London. He went to university. And so like there was 2 points of impact, as we call it now, I guess, is like I lost my job or gave up my job, and in a way, an identity, and an empty house. So, there was less of a purpose. So I thought, what can I do? And I started to think about writing a book on how to create museum exhibitions and in-house perspective. And so that's what I did. And I found it's funny how life throws us different opportunities. It's just having the courage to pick up whatever comes your way and say yes to it. And at that time, Vista Blind had found or got some funding, and they started this thing called befriending service. And so I opted for it, and I ended up getting 2 befrienders. One came once a week to take me for a walk. Another lady came to read to me. And then towards the end of my time in the museum, I also had access to work. So my support worker, I called her up after I'd left, and she didn't have a job as such. So I paid her when she came home, and I said, could you help me with sorting things out in my therapy room? At this point, I had already set up my therapy, So this is the good thing. I had an overlap of careers. So from 2000, I had started kinesiology. 2011, I stopped at the museum. But in the meantime, I picked up all this experience, knew how to set up and run a therapy session from home. I still have my therapy room. And so that helped me in overcoming my purposeless sort of existence. So anyway, I self-published the book, so it's on Kindle. And then I thought, what else can I do? So I've never done music. I wanted to learn how to play an instrument. So I found a teacher. I started to learn the guitar, and I thought it'll be fun. I can't see, so I can't see music. I've never read music. So I started recording. I had this lovely lady who came home once a week, and I recorded all the sessions on my Victor screen reader, which is a lovely device which you can record notes on. Anyway, so I thought, right, I'll have fun. But in 4 years, I did 4 years with her, and I was almost to the 5th grade. Every year she got me into attending and going for these grade 1, 2, 3, 4 exams. And it was incredible. It gives you so much more, a sense of value, self-esteem, all that comes back. And then Bhavini, actually, I got to know her through some friends from Leicester, the other visually impaired group that I was part of, that Bhavini was part of. And I heard about how she volunteered with Retina UK. She did all these amazing things, raising funds. So I thought, how can I give back to, I've had so much help from the befrienders in Leicester. Can I maybe volunteer and do something? And then Retina UK was looking for volunteers. So I applied, and I thought, I don't know if I can, but it's worth a try. So I did, and I've been on the telephone helpline at Retina UK for the last 5 years. And in the last year, Retina UK set up this portal called Discover Wellbeing, which is very appropriate for today, where we're talking about emotional and mental well-being and physical well-being, all aspects. It's a holistic approach. And it is, so as part of that, if anybody needs, it's a free online portal. You can go to retinauk.org.uk and look for Discover Wellbeing. It's just a case of it's free, you can register, you can do it on your own, but if you want to have a support, somebody supporting you in that journey, then there are a few of us who've been trained to do that. Most of the telephone helpline are volunteers, and all of them have some kind of sight loss. So I found another family where people actually are going through the same thing. They understand. So living well, definitely. Seeing well, maybe not in my case. But there are two, the senses that help us is your sight and touch are interrelated, and smell and taste are interrelated. That's why with COVID, if you notice, people who can't smell, can't taste, and it's interrelated. But with the fingers, you can actually see, even though your eyes may not, because the brain is still connected to everything. We don't necessarily just see through the eyes, we see through our skin, through our touch, and also our brain, our mind. So even touching one little shape, you can kind of figure out what else is there. And the whole picture comes to mind. I mean, I've been a very visual person before, so I can actually visualize a lot of stuff. In terms of living well, everything that Sonal just mentioned, I exercise. I have an hour every morning where I do yoga, I do pranayam, the breathing technique, I do meditation, so it's an hour of that. In my food, I dropped sugar completely about 5 years ago or 6-7 years ago, because I have a kinesiologist who treats me once a week. I go for hyperbaric oxygen therapy once a week. So there it goes for the oxidative stress issue. I've been for acupuncture, homeopathy, you name it, I've done it, I do it. I take supplements regularly. I eat well, reduce processed foods. You have to look at eating live food, so that something that's like cakes and biscuits and too much bread, all of that went out of the window when I dropped sugar. It was quite a challenge. But the biggest motivator is not losing my sight any further. About 4 or 5 years ago, I also had my cataracts done. So, when you have maybe 2% of sight left and you can double it, it's a big deal. So because when I went to get my cataracts done, I mean, the ophthalmologist had warned me, I'm not going to get much joy out of it. It's not going to make much difference because I've got such a little sight left. And I said, no, it's okay. I'm willing to go for it because my overall health is brilliant. I have no other health issues because I make sure that I eat well, I sleep. There are basics. You have to exercise, move. You need to hydrate, you need to eat well, obviously, you need to sleep well and good quality sleep, because when you sleep is where the repair, regeneration, the lymph from your brain gets moved out, the whole process. Even little things like showering, when you, at the end of the shower, you need to help the lymph move. We need to detoxify very heavily with everything anyway. But like you end the shower on as hot as you can bear with it, then go completely cold as you can bear with it. So, you go hot, cold, end on a cold, and that gets the lymph moving, wakes you up. So there are many, many naturopathic ways to, keep our health going. So I try and do as much as I can wherever I can. In terms of emotions, it's if you go on the portal of Retina UK, and it's worth going in that Discover Wellbeing. There's so much information there. Basically, be happy, be positive, and when you wake up in the morning, think about what is, smile and think, I am alive, something to celebrate. Think of all the good stuff you can face. At the end of the day, I end my day with gratitude, to be grateful for whatever happened today. And so you sleep better, you have better dreams. I mean, we have so much control over our own innate intelligence. I mean, this comes with spirituality and meditation, of course, but become your own master. You have to change how you think. If you want to change how you feel, you have to change how you think, because thinking leads to emotions, which leads to your body. So mind and body are completely interconnected, and yeah, it's fun. Life is a joy. Sight is 70% of all our senses, but the rest are pretty good as well. So never lose heart. I hope that's it.
Thank you so much, Anjani. That was amazing. That really, really was so much positivity and hope and information and sharing what's worked for you. And yeah, that truly was inspiring. And I just want to say thank you so much. I wish I could give you a hug right now.
Oh, thank you. Virtual one received.
Yeah. No, that was truly, truly amazing. Both of you, Sonal and Anjani, thank you so much. You're both fantastic speakers. And yeah, I'd just like to invite everyone, if anyone has any comments or questions. Minal, is there anything in the chat so far?
Yes, there was a question earlier from Nicola. I believe this will be for Sonal, with regards to smoking, to say, is there any research on vaping and its effects?
Oh, I'll just put my camera back on. Hi. So I don't know that there is that much research just yet. However, it will be, I imagine that the process is one to take away, and I can certainly feedback. But from our understanding of how vaping will work, I imagine that there will still be a degree of oxidative stress and ischemia, so lack of oxygen, which will still have an impact on the health of the eye. So certainly I can check on the statistics, I can check on the current research for any papers, and Bhavini, I can feed back to you, because it is an interesting question, one that perhaps we should have explored a little bit more. But I imagine that there is still going to be some degree of concern, of impact on how the eye responds to those free radicals and to that ischemia. I hope that helps. Certainly happy to investigate further.
Yeah, thank you. And if you do come across anything useful to share, I'm happy to do that with the recording as well. So we'll make a note of that.
Sure.
Anything else in the chat?
Nothing further at the moment.
No? Anyone got their hands raised or the thumbs up?
Not yet.
No. Does anyone wish to just unmute and ask a question or comment? Just a quick reminder of next week's webinars. We've got Driving and Your Vision, where we'll cover when it's safe to continue driving whilst having sight loss. We'll talk about insurance and appeals and the process if you've been told that actually maybe it's best not to continue driving, and so much more. And again, we'll have a lived experience speaker within that. And then on sorry, I keep saying Thursday, it's Wednesday. Next week, it's Wednesday, the 27th. We'll have digital eye care, so screen usage, workplace policies. Are your work providing any vouchers to get your eyes tested? That may lead to dry eyes. So we'll talk about dry eyes. And then eye drops, the various different types of eye drops there are, how to put them in correctly, if you've got multiple eye drops prescribed to you, and also what's the best way of applying them, what the best technique. So we'll be demonstrating and talking through that, as well as including those for people who have a vision impairment, how to put your eye drops in. So those are the webinars for next week, webinar 5 and 6. Okay, let's get back to today to see if there's any of you that want to share anything with our speakers today.
Bhavini, may I say something?
Yes, of course you can, Rula.
Okay, that was amazing presentation. by Sonal and Anjani. My name's Urmila, and I have several eye conditions, but one of them is chronic panuveitis. So now and then I have such pains, and I've been watching myself for several years now, the trigger points, and I realized, or I found something that was triggering it. And that was store-bought yogurt. And then I tried to experiment myself, making my own yogurt, thinking that might help me because I do need some sort of bio in my digestive system. I'm a vegetarian, by the way, and I don't eat eggs or fish or anything like that. So through experimenting, I found out that only one type of milk would allow me to set yogurt at home. And last year, I made several batches, and I've been watching myself over several months that nothing happens to me. I'm fine. So that makes me feel I'm a winner. I found something that suits me and that does not trigger my uveitis. The other thing I've been doing is, I'm sure Sonal might have come across this, is I make my own, what shall I say, concoction of turmeric, black pepper, tiny bit of cinnamon, and every morning I have about 100 millimeters, 100 mils of warm water, and I put about half a teaspoon of that mixture. And that seems to help me a great deal. Touch wood, I have not had any headaches since. This is my own experiment, and I thought I'd share with everybody that it does help me. It must be the curcumin in the turmeric or whatever it is. I've not had a headache for the last 6 weeks now, and I'm really pleased with myself. So I'm going to continue with it. I do keep a note of what I eat as well. But yeah, that does help me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing.
you for listening. Thank you for listening.
It's really interesting to listen to this, because we'll come and sort of talk about different types of fruit and vegetables or concoctions and things, but everybody needs to find the thing about finding your own healthy lifestyle is it's got to be suited to your lifestyle. So it's very easy to say to have a green leafy vegetables, but how do you prepare them, what the routine is. So it's really inspirational to hear how individually we include these kinds of nutritional elements, and certainly the benefits of these raw foods, of these fresh vegetables, you cannot underestimate it. So I think it's really helpful to share. So thank you, and please continue. It sounds good. And panuveitis is very, very difficult to manage. It's very difficult to live with, and it can be, I sympathize, because with very little warning you can have a flare and things can become very difficult, and it can it can be a multi-system, multi-organ connected issue where your general health can be affected as well. So if you found a way of keeping it settled, then we can only congratulate you. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much. I'll see how long it will last, though.
Yeah, sure.
But right now, I'm quite happy to continue. Thank you so much for your kind words, Sonal.
Not at all.
Thank you, Pravini.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Is there anything in the chat or any hands up?
Nothing at the moment.
No. Does anyone else want to share anything or ask a question?
Hi, Bhavini, it's Rania.
Okay, I heard Keith, then was it Renu?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Keith, you go
Sorry,
first,
was it me
and then we'll
first?
invite Renu in.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the presentations. They were brilliant, very empowering. And also, good luck to the last speaker as well. That's great hearing it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Keith. Urmila, that was for you as well as Sonal and Anjani. So thank you, Keith. Renu.
Hello.
Yeah.
Firstly, I also want to say a huge thank you to Sonal and Anjali. I probably will want Sonal's details because I probably want her to do a presentation. As some of you may or may not know, I'm an ECLO, so I want to say a huge thank you to Anjali for mentioning an ECLO support that you got. It's really warming that you actually received that support. Sorry. So thank you so much for mentioning that. And again, I want to get in contact with Anjali and get some tips from her as well. And Urmila, I completely agree with your formula. I do the same as well. So, and it does work. So thank you. And thank you, Bhavini.
No, thank you.
I think, can I just add there actually, Bhavini? So, you know, I think it's really interesting because we talk about evidence-based medicine. You know, we talk about finding what works in big sort of, you know, very robust clinical studies. And that's really important that we are guided by evidence-based medicine. Somebody that comes from the Black and minority ethnic community myself, I'd just like to sort of also share, you know, that I come across so many kind of, you know, different concepts of what it means to be healthy. You know, I think what makes us feel good and what contributes to our well-being is really important. And I think it's really important that we, you know, the social kind of support that Anjani mentions, that's so vitally important. You know, what I struggle with, and like, you know, if I may add, Bhavini, you know, we're on this group, you know, hosted by BAME Vision. And one of the biggest challenges is that people do not feel that they can take control of their health. Where, you know, we've, you know, as health professionals, as somebody that's been really passionate about sort of, you know, giving out important messages for people to make choices about their health, there is an element that we've tackled, which is that, you know, what will be, what my health is will be, you know, what's in my fate will be. And, you know, I you know, come from a very strong spiritual background and a very strong kind of, you know, community background. And yet what I celebrate is when we can take control of our health. And, you know, when we're talking about living well, seeing well, it's really important that we take control of our health. Now, you know, what does that mean? You know, does that mean that we, you know, we might put our faith in something that might not be so evidence-based? You know, that's another whole conversation. But the important thing is that we take control. We take control of our health. And we do that in a way where we consult the medical community, where we take advice from our peers, where we talk about our health, where we feel in control. And I think that's really, really important. You know, so, you know, I'm a big advocate of many of these sort of, you know, alternative remedies, but they have to be in the context and supported by your medical, you know, sort of, you know, professionals. But most importantly, that you take control of your health. And, you know, Renu mentioned the ECLOs, you know, and you know, Anjani's story is so powerful of what you can do when you take control. You know, I mentioned that there are some factors which you can't control. Now, you know, before I met Anjani, retinitis pigmentosa, you know, is kind of one of those conditions where it's difficult to have, you know, modifiable risk factors. You know, in the kind of ophthalmic community, you know, yes, there's so much research, and Retina UK are doing so much, and it's a very exciting time. But, you know, she's nonetheless absolutely taken control of her health and taking control of her career, taking control of her life. And I'm sure, you know, we all celebrate just how much you're doing, Anjani, you know, to do and, you know, as much as you possibly can to maintain that social network, to maintain your independence, to maintain your health. And that's in an eye condition where, you know, arguably there's not much, in inverted commas, that you can do to control the progression of retinitis pigmentosa. So it's absolutely exemplar, you know. So whatever you're doing to control your health, continue to do that. And that's my big message, is take control of your health. And we really, you can make a difference. You know, and my personal story is, after my second son was born, I wasn't very well. And, you know, in my 40s, I started to feel that I had no control over my health. And that's despite the fact that I'm a health professional. That's despite the fact that I've done a master's in public health. I still felt that there was nothing I could do to control my own health. And, you know, 4 or 5 years on, that's a big change now. But it's hard. And I'm a fully sighted person. It's hard to take control when morale is low, when you're not well. But every little bit helps. Every little bit, every piece of fruit and vegetables, every 5-minute walk, every Surya Namaskara you do, if you like yoga, or, you know, every Pilates class you go to, or every phone call you make to get in touch with somebody, it contributes to your health, it contributes to your well-being. So that's my plea to everybody, is take control, enjoy your health, enjoy your body, enjoy your vision. And there's a lot you can do to preserve that. So, and I think that's all of us are on this call for, is to really find out ways to preserve our vision and to celebrate our life and our health and our vision. So.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Yeah, I think, you know, there's something each of us can do. You know, you just got to take that start. You know, once you take that first step, you know, that's the biggest thing you can do to step towards a healthier and healthier lifestyle overall. And, you know, introducing something else once you're comfortable with that first step, you know, you just need to make that first step to begin with. I mean, I should tell myself, practice what you preach. So yeah, I completely agree with everything that's been said today. Is there anyone else that wants to ask a question, or maybe perhaps comment on anything, or like to share if they've got their own personal approaches to a healthier lifestyle?
Can I contribute one more point, which I forgot to mention?
Yeah, of course.
Which is that the last 3 years, I also started writing a blog called blindingtruths.com. So it's blinding truths with an S. Again, it's just about reflections on when life throws us a curveball, is my strap line. And it's not about just sight loss. It's just reflecting. And I think being an observer of what is happening around you. And you see, when losing this outer sight, you start building insights. Then what happens is you get out of your own head a bit and not think negatively about what you can't do, but what you can do. And that can alter a lot of things. So it's just something else I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very important, you know, not to dwell and not to get into that. You know, we had that talk about an eye on mental health. And if we think about all the things that we're not able to do anymore as a result of sight loss, you know, it can get into a downward spiral to a place where, you know, you can get negative thoughts and it could lead to poor mental health. However, if you can find things that you can do, yeah, of course, there'll be slight adaptations. You might need a little bit of assistance. You might rely or depend on technology. But nonetheless, it's something you can do. So if you concentrate on the things that you're able to do, and in this case, we're talking about live well, see well, you know, the first step, you know, whether it's, you know, for a walk, whether it's joining a exercise class, whether it's doing online sessions, you know, whatever it may be, or maybe cutting out sugar, or if it's whatever thing you want to start off with, it's just taking control and taking that first step. But enough from me. I want to hear from you, see if there's any more questions or comments you may have for both Sonal or Anjani.
There's nothing on the chat at the moment.
Nothing on the chat. Yeah. Does anyone want to unmute?
I think Pushpa Madhwani, I think she'd like to say. You're just on mute there, Bushra,
Yes.
if you can. Yeah.
Hi, I said thank you to both of you, Sonal and Anjali. It's Anjali who connected me to the BAME vision, and I thank her for that. I've known Anjali for last over 49 years, but it's the first time I'm hearing her stories and just can't stop. My dear. Wonderful. When I had some problems, I used to break down. I say, wow, I have got this, I've got that with the age-related. But when listening to Anjali's story, you get so much strength. If she can do it, why can't I? Thank you, Anjali.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that Anjali has been very, very inspiring, and so is Sonal as well. But there's a lot to learn from people's experiences in life as well. And it's good when you share some of your experiences. It encourages a lot of other people where they feel this doom and gloom. Whereas if they look at the positive side of it, it makes a big difference in life. Thank you very much to all of you. It's a very good presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Narendra. I keep calling you Bharat, sorry, Narendra and Pushpa. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it was very powerful and very informative by everyone. Urmila Ben sharing her story, so everyone's been amazing. Thank you. Thank you for coming onto this platform and sharing, because like we've heard today, it is really powerful by hearing everyone's experiences. It's encouraging, it's motivating. So thank you. Perhaps one last comment and then we'll go for the poll. Any questions? Maybe how to get started?
Hi, Bhavini, it's Renu again.
Hi.
I just want to highly recommend or suggest to actually, if we can get this recording as far and wide out in the BAME community, I think it would be amazing. And obviously I will help to do that. But yeah, I've just already my brain's ticking like, you know what, I really want to get this recording out as widespread as we could.
Yeah, we'll do our best to get the recordings out as quickly as we possibly can. But for anyone who does want to share it, they can share it on Facebook, because it's there right now as we speak. The live recording is there. So anyone on Facebook, you can actually watch it and share it, and share the link through WhatsApp or other Facebook groups. So that is an option. But we will get the YouTube recording as quickly as we can once all 6 webinars have been completed. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely be sharing it through Facebook. So don't you worry there.
Thank you, Reddy. Okay, if there's nothing else from anyone, I'd really appreciate if you can complete the poll, because it just helps us plan future webinars and share with others the impact that these webinars are having. So if we can have the poll, that would be amazing if you could complete it. It's very quick. It's just got short 5 questions. And whilst people are completing the poll, just like to share, if anyone isn't aware, so I work for the Thomas Pocklington Trust, and every month on the 2nd Tuesday, I actually host I Care and You webinars. So something similar. We have a different theme on topic each month, where we have the informative sessions. So just like how Sonal presented today about living well, diet, nutrition, exercise, we have a different theme. So if anyone is interested in attending those webinars, I can share an email address where you can register and we can get the links sent out to you. But it's london.scene@pocklington-trust.org.uk, and you don't have to be based in London. They're online, so we do have people from the States, Australia, we have people from everywhere. So that's the beauty of having online webinars. But if you have done the poll and if you don't have any comments or questions to share, then thank you so much for joining us. I do want to thank both Sonal, Anjani, and all of our speakers today, actually, because I think it was so inspiring and informative and motivating. It really, truly was. So thank you so much for giving up your evening to share your stories and your information with us this evening. And I hope to see you next Tuesday for our webinar 5 on driving and your vision. Have a lovely rest of your evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.